a board member always poses a question with a certain answer or a certain keyword that he or she likes to hear. It was 10 minutes of complete questions on India's foreign policy, geopolitics, India's relation with Afghanistan in the last 20 years.
What kind of better workshop and webinar we can have with you once the main results are out? So I just, wanted to have some set of questions.
Someone asked me, like, when did you start preparing for civils? So, I said, I have always, I think all of us have always been preparing for civil. I obviously cannot say this outrightly to all the candidates because now then people tend to get nervous. But I have this habit, I always, irrespective of an interview. So I think coming to interview, just to put it up front, I think for any kind of question or a conundrum or a scenario that the board gives, I don't think there is one right or one wrong answer, right? You can always have, if you are mentioning about over preparing or like a bookish thing also, I think you can always give a balanced answer and play safe. Like something like an essay at a lower level, like how certain essays that you take, even if it's a philosophical essay, some people say, no, you have to probably take a stand, right? But some people tend to give various aspects. Like if there is an essay, you give an economic aspect, social aspect, political aspect, international relation aspect, and then you play safe, and then you are good. You're above, you're not just good, you're above average. So taking that to interview, I don't think it is a wrong step to prepare, but I think where we go wrong is when we tend to over prepare. So when we tend to over prepare, then the answers become scripted. So you focus, how the same thing happens, I think, when we over prepare certain questions in means, then you actually try and blurt out or say what you know rather than what's being asked. If you prepare a certain thing on a particular area, irrespective of the situation, you tend to highlight more of what you know. The question may be in that area, but may not be directly to what you've prepared. So that's where non-verbal.
Can you give an example from your experience, anything which comes top of your mind?
Yeah, so a question that was posed to me by Chaubeser's board was, one of the members asked, what do you think is your ideal kind of a leadership model? He gave me a scenario, just think you are in a district, you are heading the district or a department, and then people are not, being as efficient as you would like to be. So what kind of leadership model would you try to adopt? Now, if, say, given the fact that generally what I've realized is in such scenario, a board member always poses a question with a certain answer or a certain keyword that he or she likes to hear from the candidate. Probably that person had a particular idea in mind. So now if I had over-prepared over leadership models, then I would throw those bookish models, this guy's model of leadership, that XYZ model of leadership, ABC's model of leadership. But then I tend to probably take a safer route in such scenario. And I basically said something like a community-based leadership model. If in your district, the villagers are not trying to are on the same page as you for a particular program, you tend to take a community-based leadership model. Like you may not be the leader, but you expect the community to come and step in and work together. So he probably didn't agree to that, or probably he had a different idea in mind. So he kept reiterating the question a couple of times. So this is where it's important that two of us were not in the same page. Probably he was not being able to structure his question well, or probably I was not able to understand his question, or probably I was not able to structure my answer well. So back and forth it happened, and after a point of time, I just said, so I'm sorry, I'm not being able to understand anything. So he just understand the question. So he just looked to Chaubeser, and Chaubeser said, okay, leave it. So in this scenario, I'm posing this scenario because two instances. That one, that if you tend to be very bookish and over-prepare, you'll blurt out those leadership models that you had memorized, like in a GS answer.
Yeah.
Secondly, non-verbal cues. Had I just been a little nervous, I would have tended to stutter or be nervous, and that question would have been stuck at the back of my mind throughout the interview, that I couldn't even answer a simple question like, what leadership model would you tend to adopt? But going forward, I think it's very important also in your own way and with a degree of confidence, with that non-verbal cues in mind, you just say that I don't understand or I don't know. So that, no
Okay.
are you like nervous, no are you over prepared. I think you can still get through that.
Okay, you said something interesting. You said that sometimes the board, by the very way in which they, frame a question, they kind of give a hint as to where they want you to
Yeah,
go
yeah,
or where
definitely.
they want you to lean, right? And I think this is what we were discussing that day when we were saying like profile a board. What
Uh-huh.
I meant was that, this art of understanding where the board is, leaning on, and it's better if you toe that line at least for a while so that it's smoother. Right? And obviously, you need to be mindful, you need to not stutter, and you need to be present to
Mhm.
know that. Has it ever happened to you that you got a volley of subjective questions and then okay, this guy wants me to lean on this side, and then you did lean on that side? Did that ever happen successfully?
So, I about leaning, yeah, like just to give an example, like with respect to in 2021, I remember I was because foreign service was my first preference. I was asked extensively on. I think I'd mentioned the Taliban had just captured Kabul that very day in which my interview was held. So around
Okay.
10 minutes was only on India's relations in with Afghanistan going forward, and also in the larger neighborhood vis-a-vis China. So that person was keeping on trying to ask me indirectly to compare between India's geopolitical standings and and China's vis-a-vis the larger South Asian neighborhood. Also,
Hmm.
he went to the extent to directly ask me, then what do you think? Should we start talking with Afghanistan? But
Hmm.
as point blank as that. At that point, I
Point
don't think
blank.
we can
Yeah.
still like scuttle around and say, Ki, nahi, I think we should wait and watch. Everyone knows we should wait and watch. No one like will like when stakes are so high, even they understand probably that when the stakes are so high, even the highest, like even the cabinet secretary or the NSA will not like be like, okay, yehi karte hai, like in the fit of the moment, right?
Hmm.
But probably he wanted a candidate like in how it happens in closed door meetings that everyone gives their point of view, and later on they just take a balanced view which evolves over a couple of days or a couple of
Hmm.
weeks or even a couple of months when policies are drawn. So that said, I think in such a situation he gave that kind of leaning, like though he did like probe me or push me, but he just wanted to know my kind of leaning. So like even had I said whatever I said, had I said the opposite, like India should not talk or India should talk to Taliban also, there is no right or wrong answer in this. It just depends on what you say and how you say it.
But he did want you to commit
Yeah,
to
he
something.
probably wanted me to come in. That's how I read the room. That he probably wanted me to come because it was 10 minutes of complete questions on India's foreign policy, geopolitics, India's relation with Afghanistan in the last 20 years, today and in the future. So after having so much discussion also, I still can't be like, in like lukewarm water, like I don't know whether India should or should not
Right.
talk to.
Right. Okay. Cool. The reason why we're having this Zoom call is that because, at least our running conversation kind of makes me think, okay, what kind of better workshop and webinar we can have with you once the main results are out. So I just, wanted to have some set of questions. One thing interesting which always comes out is that it so appears to me that you've always been good with discussions and debates and arguments in the way that you kind of hierarchically flesh them out, and you kind of figure out which way to lean, which way to go. What has kind of helped you in this, because it cannot be UPSC preparation only. I mean, there would have to be some things from their upbringing or childhood or school or
Yeah,
college times
definitely.
which probably helped shaping up.
So I think this goes a long way. Like I remember, like just to go a little forward, someone asked me like, when did
Hmm.
you start preparing for civils? So I mean, I said I have always like I think all of us have already always been preparing for civil. Like there is no one date that okay now this person has started preparing for civils because it is always a cumulative effort. It is always
Hmm.
cumulative knowledge that comes into play. And
Hmm.
the same
Hmm.
question was posed, I think, when I had gone back to my alma mater, SRCC, after the result. One college student asked me how, she was like, oh, no, interview is such a nerve wracking thing. How should we prepare for interview? So I said, see, you don't actually prepare for interview from a given day. Like, so how you're asking me how it's like what has helped me. I think it's always been a cumulative effort. I obviously cannot say this outrightly to all the candidates, because now then people tend to get nervous, right? Like probably in school or college, I didn't take part, like for on stage activities, I didn't take part in debating. I probably didn't read a lot of books. I didn't probably get into a lot of discussions in my college days. I was always of a certain personality, and that's not wrong. But then if you say this outrightly to aspiring candidates, then they tend to get nervous that, like they think, okay, from now I'll start preparing for interview. But what we have to understand is we had always been preparing for it. Personality cannot be developed over 2 months, 3 months, even 6 months, even a year. So that's it. I think the activities like in school, taking part in debates, elocution, drama has always helped me, reading a lot of books. And more so, I think talking to a lot of people. I had this opportunity to come to Delhi for graduation, and then JNU really gave me a very broad perspective. I met people from every background, from every school of thought, so as to say, from every part of the country and even outside the country. And most important, I felt is I have this habit, like, I mean, I've said this only to a couple of people, but I have this habit, like, I always, like, irrespective of an interview, I always, that's also because probably I tend to overthink. That's what my sister says. Like, and she's a clinical psychologist. So I always make the scenarios in my head.
Sorry, I think I missed. Who's the clinical psychologist?
My sister.
I missed the part.
My
Okay,
sister.
okay, got it.
So what happens? I always make these scenarios in my head, irrespective of exam, even after exam, even during my normal thing. Like I make a scenario, and I always think like, how would I react in this scenario? So I play out that. So that same thing I used to do, like, okay, if this question is asked, I keep playing out, even when interview is not near. Like right now, I'm not going to give interview, but still, I don't know, probably it's in my muscle memory that I think, okay, if someone asks me this question, how would I respond? It's just been like a kind of, I don't know, a kind of habit now for me. I always play out scenarios in my head. Like, and that has nothing to do with preparation. That has always been like there. I don't know. So this, I think, did help me, because that ways I constructed a lot of questions for myself, gave answers to myself, constructed rebuttals to those answers. So I think playing out scenario really helps. It really gives you the confidence that, yeah, like if I can answer my question, knowing my like deepest fears, I can answer anyone's question.
Yeah. You mentioned that you've been around people with different school of thoughts, so as to say, right? And India, as of now, is like there's a pretty much wide array of folks with interesting school of thoughts. How do you synthesize it then? So because right or left or something in center, they look quite cogent when they're putting it, right? So how do you synthesize things in between? What has helped you? Few books or any go-to, I don't know, speaker or person that you've heard a lot, which has helped you come in the middle and synthesize thoughts, because it's easy to get then swayed away by a particular narrative, which we see a lot happening, right?
So this is a very interesting perspective. But when this whole JNU fiasco had happened with Kanhaiya Kumar, I'm sure you must be knowing it. I was in JNU that time as a student in 2016.
Oh, interesting.
So and then I had this wonderful opportunity to listen to all this, though I was not directly involved, but they used to have these talk series, speeches. So I was an audience to many of them. And in one, Shashi Tharoor had come. So he just said one line. He started his speech with, I have complete he had complete so as to say, solidarity with the situation. And he said, if you are not a communist in your 20s, you don't have a heart. And if you're still a communist in your 30s, you don't have a mind. Okay. So now I think over time, growing and learning more about the world, and more so as a civil servant, I think once you start UPSC preparation, and the policies are, we definitely will realize our policies, our educational backgrounds will be a little left of center if I have the leverage to and the freedom to put somewhere on the spectrum. But we'll obviously realize that in this country, in the society, in our government, nothing is black and white. Everything is shades of gray, right? So I think only so as to say an anchor that we as civil servants or even as responsible citizens can hold, and I have been a strong believer in that, is we always go back to the ideals of the Constitution. So any question that is posed, I don't think we should think that this board is such and such, that this person has such a background. Like, I don't want to name anyone, but we generally have this tendency, like, this particular member is from this particular school of thought. He's a more rightist. He
Right.
has an orange teacup, whatever. But if then we start playing into those lines, that's what I meant when I said keep preparing very board centric. Like, if we start playing those in mind, then it really messes up answers in our mind. Rather, like, I think our anchor should only be the constitutional principle. So whatever you answer, obviously you will have your own personal beliefs, you will have your own prejudices, everyone has it. You will have your own biases, but I think all that should be anchored around the constitutional principles, and I think that gives a very good clarity as to how we as civil servants should be and how our answers as aspiring civil servants ought to be. So that is where I think I can, like, in that spectrum of left, right, center, I think I can really, like, anchor somewhere.
Perfect. That's awesome. Thanks, Zenden. We were just in the middle of fine-tuning some of the transcripts. Look, we're going through the transcripts of the last year. So, I just wanted, this specific thing cleared out. Key. Great, awesome. I'll keep pinging you, on weekends, time and again,
always,
right? So that, the event leading up to a good webinar, we have enough, masala between both of us that, this is what's helpful for the candidates. Thanks for the time out, man. I believe you're in NPA, right, Abhi?
Yeah, I'm in NPA.
Cool. Have a great day. Thanks, man.
Thank you so much. You can always, if I can be of any help, you can always.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.